reasonably good way. Okay, yeah, Richard, the law, that's true, but there are also reasons why law are like, there's reasons why following the law is good regardless of morality. But we're going to talk about that in our lesson on political philosophy in like a couple of weeks. So not now. Any last questions on this? Okay, I'm just going to move on because I didn't think this would take that so long. Okay, so let's get to the essence of today's lesson. What is philosophy? If you were to search that up in like the Merriam-Webster dictionary, you'd find the dictionary definition is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. But I guess that's not really helpful because, like, what does that mean? What do you mean by the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence? That's kind of vague. So another way that we can look at what philosophy is through the epistemology of the word. Philosophy is made of two separate words. It's made of philo and sophia. And together, these two phrases mean love for knowledge. And I think this does a much better job of capturing what philosophy really is. Because in essence, philosophy is really the search for meaning and knowledge in a world that's often very difficult to interpret. And the reason that this is different from the sciences and the mathematics is due to its focus on reasoning and intuition rather than experimentation and calculation. However, the goals of philosophy are actually quite similar to sciences and mathematics. In fact, many of the subject areas actually originally stemmed from philosophy. So what does philosophy include? Traditional philosophy includes 5 main categories. They're the 5 on the slide. I'm not going to read them. You guys can read them in your head, I guess. Okay, out of these 5 main traditional philosophy categories, there's several that are really hard to discuss on a middle and high school level, so we're not going to talk about them. We're not going to talk about epistemology because discussions on that are very, very abstract. We're not going to talk about logic because, like, usually introductory logic is taught in math class, so I don't see the point. And we're also not going to talk about aesthetics because that is also a lot more advanced. So the 2 topics that we're going to focus on in this course are ethics and metaphysics. And in addition to that, we're also going to go into political and economic philosophy, but that'll be later. Does anyone have any questions on this slide or the previous one? Okay. Oh, wait, I have a slide for this. Okay. So this is the general overview of what we're going to do in the program. Week 1, Introduction to Philosophy. Week 2, Ethics and Applied Ethics. Week 3, we're going to go deeper into ethics and applied ethics, and we're going to talk about a specific case about animal rights. And then, if time permits, we're also going to go into other selected topics. In week 4, we're going to talk about political and economic philosophy. So that's people like John Locke or Thomas Hobbes, or like maybe even Karl Marx for economic. And then finally, for week 5, I think this is the most interesting week because we're going to talk about selected questions in metaphysics. So this can be questions about what does it mean to be a person? Is it possible to have free will? What is the mind-body problem and how do we tackle that? Questions like those. And finally, week 6 plus, I don't plan that far ahead, so that's to be determined. Okay, so why do you study philosophy? And after being in contact with philosophy for 4 years now, I think I came up with 3 main points. The first thing is solving difficult questions. When we hear things like don't kill other people randomly and don't steal things, or like in general, don't break a good law, things like that, they're very obvious in modern cultures, in modern society, but they weren't always agreed upon before. Like, for example, it's generally not so much of a controversial statement to say that human sacrifice is bad, or torture is bad. But in the past, there have been civilizations that did that. Well, yeah, sure. Obvious is a relative term, but what I mean is it's generally accepted. Yeah. Okay, well, that's a discussion for another time. My point is that overall, they're more accepted than they were before. The second point is contributing to other fields. So things like psychology, sociology, math, physics, they all originally stem from philosophy. And finally, there's many indirect benefits of philosophy. Like when you really boil it down, philosophy is really just a way of thinking about things logically. It has applications ranging from critical thinking to public speaking to debate and even STEM subjects. So taking philosophy courses doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to major in philosophy and you're going to become a philosophy professor or something like that. I think philosophy is important for, pretty much everyone. Anyone have any questions up to this point? Also, on Nicholas's point, we're actually going to talk about cultural relativity in the next lesson about ethics. So be sure to be there. All right. So has anyone heard of the trolley problem? It's a pretty famous problem. I don't think you got kicked, Jack, or Nicholas, I mean. Okay, so it looks like most of you do know it, but I'm just going to read it anyway. You see a runaway trolley moving towards 5 people who are tied to the track. You're standing next to a lever that controls a switch, and if you pull the lever, the trolley is going to be redirected onto a side track, saving the 5 people, but killing the 1 person. So the question is, what do you do here? And I know this is a famous question, but what are your thoughts on this? The reason I picked this is because most people already have opinions on this, so it's easier to have discussion. And once again, you can unmute yourself or you can type in chat. Kevin, you can't stop the trolley. It's going to kill someone. The 1 person. Okay, so Max and Kevin both say the 1 person. So does Pixel 3 XL. I assume that's not your name, but okay. Okay, so for the people who think that they are going to pull the lever, wait 1 sec. Okay, Jerry, that's not an option once again. So for the people who say that they're going to kill the 1 person and save the 5 people, what is your reasoning? And while you're responding, let me just respond. Fido, Alan, Drift, you can get all of them. Well, that's not a choice either. The point of the
First Fido, by the way. I'm sorry.
Fido. Okay, my bad, Fido. So assume that these are the only 2 options and nothing unexpected is going to happen. Okay, so it seems like most people are saying comparing the loss, saving 5 people, 5 is greater than 1, number matters, weighing of impacts. Okay, so it seems like most of you are citing consequentialist arguments. Essentially what consequentialist arguments are, we're going to talk about this more in depth next meeting, but consequentialist arguments are saying that you evaluate your action based on the consequences, and you pick the action that has the best consequences. So it seems like most of you are going to do that. And we're going to talk about that more in this meeting and the next, actually. Who's going to not pull the lever and kill the 5 people? And on Nicholas' question, these people are all random and they're all like relatively similar importance. So yeah, who thinks that they would not pull the lever? The Nicholas, that does not matter. Um, that's the people on the tracks are the only like morally relevant parts of this question. For Richard's question, is there uncertainty if the person pulls the lever? No, there's no uncertainty. If you pull the lever, it's going to kill one person. If you don't, it's going to kill 5 people. Yeah, Francis, it is a hard decision, although killing yourself probably will not aid you in your decision. Okay, so that's interesting. It seems like very few people say that they're going to actually kill the 5 people. Yeah, I'll address that later, Jack. Okay, so there's actually several variations of the trolley problem, most of which are directed at people who say that they are going to kill the one person. But before that, here's an interesting statistic. So there was a research study done a couple of years back, and it found that 69.9% of philosophy professors chose to pull the lever. But out of the general public, 90% of people chose to pull the lever. So I thought that was quite interesting because, I mean, that's a pretty big difference between philosophy people and laymen. Here's variation 2. Have you guys seen this variation before? Okay, I'm going to read it then. And also, yes, I see that there's a remaining meeting time. The way to get around that without having to pay like $14 a month is to restart the meeting. So I'll restart the meeting when the time runs out and then send you guys the new link in the WeChat group. So as before, there's a trolley that's going on its track towards 5 people. You're on a bridge under which it'll pass, and you can stop the trolley by pushing someone very heavy in front of it. And conveniently enough, just like in every philosophy question, there's a fat man next to you. You can stop the trolley if you push the fat man onto the track, killing him to save 5 people. So who would do this? Weston, that's not part of the question. We're just assuming that there's only 2 options because thought experiments, they're like hard to conduct in real life. Francis, okay. So most people are saying no, and sacrificing yourself is once again not an option. Chloe says yes. Okay. Kevin says yes as well. Okay. So let's see. So Francis, Max, and Xingning Song, um, what is your reasoning for not killing the fat person? You could once again type in chat or unmute yourself. You need consent. Okay. Well, on the question of consent, we assume that these 5 people on the tracks are also not on the tracks consensuously. They didn't give consent for being tied on the track and being in the way of the trolley. And addressing Richard's question, you will not face any consequences regardless of your choice. Okay, so it looks like Chris says that it would be directly your fault instead of a bad accident. Okay, so that's a very interesting point to bring up because in the previous question, Chris, did you say that you would pull the lever or not? So how is it better? If you pull the lever, aren't you also directly killing the person? Where's the moral difference on this? Okay, I see. So let's see. So I'm assuming that Chris and Alan, both of you are essentially saying that um, you'd feel less guilty because there's a middleman scenario. Okay, so it's true that you would feel less guilty, but let's assume that you're not going to feel any emotions after this. Why is it morally significant that there's a middleman, in this case, a lever? Also, it's probably easier if you just talk. So, because it's kind of hard to keep track of the chat. So, if anyone wants to talk, please do that.
Wait, if you make the fat guy die, won't you get arrested from the police?
Assume that there's no legal consequences. I mean, would your answer change if you knew that there's not going to be any repercussions, either emotionally or legally?
Yeah.
What would you say then? Yeah, go ahead. Fido.
Yeah, so I think my point is you should push the guy down because um, the variations kind of the same as the previous one. You're like sacrificing one person's life to gain 5 people's life.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the theory, like the like consequence something, like
Mm-hmm.
according to consequence, you make your decision. I think though it's kind of brutal or like not human should do, like pushing down a famine still like saving 5 people life. That's
Okay, I see.
yeah.
And then Eric says, but you're sacrificing someone else's life. Okay, so let me ask you this, Eric. In the previous question, if you had chosen to pull the lever, aren't you also sacrificing someone else's life?
Yeah, that's the point. If you pull the lever and you push the man down, the consequence is the same. You also like you murdered like whatever. You just murdered a man in whatever method.
Okay. But Francis says that they're fundamentally different. So could you explain why you think that they're fundamentally different? And where would the fault come from? Like, it might feel worse to push the man, but isn't it also true that pulling the lever leads to the same thing? Okay, I see. Jack has a question. Okay, well, right now we have less than a minute left on the meeting, so I'm gonna close the meeting, which is gonna kick everyone out, and then I'm gonna send a new meeting link in the WeChat group. Okay, did everyone get that? Okay, see you in like 10 seconds.